Welcome to Social Jumpstart, the cable television program about social media. And I'm Mike Wolpert. Our guest today is Sarah Houghton. She is the acting librarian at the San Rafael City Public Library here in Marin County, California. But she's really better known as her job as a blogger for the librarianinblack.net. And she is the all-around basic a girl, geek, genius, know-it-all stuff about digital rights management. And I don't want to oversell. So forgive me if I have.
Okay,
Sarah,
okay.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you because I'm so curious about where we're headed in this world of new media when it comes to privacy and when it comes to who's really knowing what we're doing and what we're checking out. I mean, for my whole life, the expectation is when you go to the library, you check out a book, that's just your business. So I'd like to talk about how that changes, and I'd like to first understand how you got into this and how it started for you.
I was a graduate student in literature and was very disillusioned with academia, noticing that I didn't really enjoy all of the discussions in the back room about some book that someone had written, 200 years ago, and I just didn't feel like I was helping anyone with what I was doing every day. And at the time, I'd been working in public and academic libraries to put myself through school. And I realized, I like this part. I actually feel like I'm helping someone doing this type of work. And while I was going to library school to get my degree, I discovered that I had a knack for technology and a knack for coding, and I got placed into a couple of technology positions very early on. And that just kind of pushed me in the technology direction, even though that really wasn't my background and wasn't my intent. But I love it, and I love what I do, and I love working in a public library because anyone can go there and learn about anything, and we will help you for free. You can't do that anywhere else. That's an amazing thing to be able to do every day.
Right, because the Google is very handy, but there's nothing quite as valuable as a research librarian who just kind of knows everything and knows where to find it if they don't actually know it.
Yeah, we don't actually know everything,
Oh, you don't?
but we do know where to find it. That's the skill set. Yeah, we're not some all-knowing, omniscient, wonderful. Sorry to break the illusion, but
I was pretty sure that they just found these people who knew everything.
no. I mean, we do know a lot. We're a pretty smart bunch of people, but no, what we know is where to look, and we know how to find stuff efficiently and get it to you in the way that works best for you. So that's what we know.
That's what you know.
Yeah, it's still valuable.
Oh, yes. Well, the world of being a librarian was kind of unchanged for a very long time. The cards in the drawers. I remember this stuff as a kid. I could find stuff, know where to go.
The card catalog, right?
The card catalog. But that's all kind of being transformed now, and you're really part of that, of the transformation to the digital online libraries. Talk a little bit about first of all, how does one check out a digital book? I don't even understand how that works.
Okay, so think of a digital book as a physical book. There's no different. It's one copy, one person gets to use it at a time in most cases. And when the digital book gets checked out to you, you just go onto the website, you say, this is the book I want. You add it to your cart, much like you would an Amazon cart or any other cart. And then you say, check out. And it says, oh, okay, now it's checked out to you. Do you want to download it to your computer? Do you want to transfer it to a mobile device? And you just click through, and it just, that's how it works, and it happens. And the way that it stays checked out to you is that the company that we contract with has a little database that has your library card number, and they say, oh, this is Mike's book. And Mike gets to have it for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, however long it might be. At the end of that period, the file self-encrypts, and so the file's still there. You just can't read it anymore because your loan period is over. And then if you want to check it out again, you just renew, and it's magically unencrypted, and you can read it again.
It's a different process than actually bringing the book back and forth.
Yes, it's a little more involved than the simply picking it up off the shelf and putting it on your desk at home. Yeah.
And what level of, I was going to say invasion of privacy, but that's maybe not exactly what I'm searching for. But it would seem now, so they know what device I've put it on.
Correct.
Can I put it on multiple devices? How do they manage this? This is where digital rights management comes into play.
Right. Generally, it depends on what company we're talking about, and different publishers can set different limits and terms on what you can do with books, either books you check out through the library or even books you buy. The publishers can set terms. Most of the time, you can download it to one device and then transfer it to one other device, a mobile device or whatever. With books that you buy, sometimes you'll have a little more leeway, and it also depends on who you buy them from. Different companies will have different rules. So if you buy something through Apple versus if you buy it through Amazon, you're adhering to two different sets of rules, of terms of service that they've put into place, the companies have, and that's what governs what you can do with the book.
And so in theory, you know what you're walking into, but in reality, we're also used to just clicking I agree to terms of service, that we're just trying to get by that gate.
I saw a wonderful cartoon the other day that said, the biggest lie ever told, I have read and agree to these terms of service. And I think that that's true. None of us read them. None of us really even acknowledge that there might be something in there that we don't want to agree to. We just say, yes, I want this thing, whether it's software or a book or music, and we just click yes and move forward.
And I've bought books from Amazon, and I remember a while ago, Amazon decided that a certain book, the person that was selling it didn't have the rights to sell it, and so it vaporized off of everybody's Kindle. Now, that was the first inclination that I had that there was still some sort of open door. I had assumed, because I didn't read the terms of service or the agreement, I had just assumed that I bought it, so now it was mine. And
No.
Tell me why.
No. Well, why is because the companies have decided to make everything that we pay for, we purchase online for digital content, it's not something we own. It's something we're licensing the use of. So when you buy or you pay for a book through Amazon for your Kindle, or you pay for some music or anything, you're not buying it to own it most times. You're just saying, I now have a license that allows me to access this on this device or use it on these two devices. And that's the extent of what you're allowed to do. That content still belongs to them. And so they do have the right to take it off of your device. They have the right to edit it after they've already sent you a copy. They have the right to pretty much do whatever they want with it, because all you're doing is almost paying for like a streaming subscription to that content. You don't own anything.
So, like the advent of online music services, where we're not actually buying music, we're just paying for the right to listen to it.
Right, so services like Spotify or RDO or Groove Shark, where you're paying for access to listen, but you don't have any ownership of any of that. The difficulty for libraries is that traditionally our model has been we buy something once, we own it, we lend it out to a whole bunch of people, and then when it wears out or it's not popular anymore, we can donate it to another library, or we can sell it through our Friends of the Library group. And now that we don't own all of this content that we're purchasing, we're faced with two challenges. One is that we can't guarantee that we'll have that content in 10 years. We can't guarantee that we would still be able to archive these, great books or popular things, or that the technology will even exist at that time to be able to read those files. And the other problem is that we've lost this right of first sale, which is we own that thing and we can give it away and we can share it with multiple people. Can't do that anymore. And so it's really changed, I think, with digital media and libraries, where we're struggling to find where our niche is and what kind of services we can offer that are unique, but that don't turn us into kind of a self-defeating entity where we're paying tons of money for stuff that we're not going to have in 20 years.
And that's an interesting point, because the technology could change so drastically that this beautiful iPad that we now have that we can read, or the Amazon Kindle, could become, and really likely will become, obsolete. So that means all the data or all the files that we've paid for licensing becomes obsolete along with it.
Right, and that's the problem of digital rights management, because that technology locks those files down so that only certain people with certain other technology are allowed to unlock them. And for us in a library, it's antithetical to what we stand for. We stand for free and open access to all information. Digital rights management completely prevents that. And so with files that are not encrypted, that don't have digital rights management, so let's say a plain MP3 for a music file, that's something that we can migrate that file to the new file types as they emerge or are created, so that we can have access to that in the future as long as we're diligent. But if it's a WMA file that's all locked down with digital rights management, there's nothing we can do to unlock that. There's nothing that we can do to migrate it forward. We're stuck with that. And if the technology to unlock it goes away, or the keys to unlock it go away, the library's left with data that nobody can see anymore. And that's frightening when you think about what the world could look like in 50, 100 years from now, where all of that data is there, but no one can get at it.
So we could be going down a road that used to just be science fiction, because we could, if somebody other than me is in charge of what's on my Kindle, if Amazon can come in and edit a book that's on my Kindle, if they, not only can they technology, they've proven that, but if they can legally do that and take a book away, then that opens up that nightmare idea of the government controlling what we can read and can't read. And so in one hand, we have this giant blossoming freedom with social media, where the old model of broadcast is not fatally broken, but certainly cracked and broken, to where the power of information dissemination has gone from a few to the many, and now we're in a place where it's the many to the many.
Right.
This is the other side of that. This is a huge dark area where information now isn't in control. I have a closet full of DVDs or CDs that I burn into digital files. I figure I bought the CD originally, I burn the files. I consider myself a marginally ethical guy, but if I want to share a bunch of old albums with a friend of mine, it never occurred to me that I'd be committing some crime, because much like I agree to the terms of service, I don't really read the FBI warning at the beginning of my videotape.
Right.
But that's not really going to be the case. I can't do that with the stuff I buy from iTunes. And so then what happens? Where do we go with this? If we start having more and more digital books, my grandfather bought a book, gave it to my dad gave it to me.
You can't do that now. I mean, you just can't with most services. Some of them will allow you to share it with one other person, but it's so limited. Or you can share this one book one time with one other person, and then that's it, no more sharing. I think what we're going to see is consumers starting to push back once more people realize the limitations that we're functioning under, and saying this is not okay with us. And once the consumers make that kind of a statement and vote with their pocketbooks, then you're going to see people, I think, in the companies start to respond and to create services that are more open. And I think what we've seen so far is that companies that provide more open access to information, where it's not as locked down or they're not tracking you as much, they become very popular as soon as people figure out that, oh, there's another choice. I don't have to be, under Amazon's yoke of craziness and privacy violations. I can choose to be part of this other model that's more open and respects individual rights more. So I think we'll see some slight shifts in the market in the next 5 to 10 years, where it won't be as bad as it is right now. Right now, it's Wild West, crazy town frontier. It's scary, but I do think that will change over time.
Because Amazon sells millions of digital books. In fact, more digital books to e-readers at this point than they do physical books.
Correct.
They could turn that whole thing off.
I don't think that would be to their benefit,
right,
but yes,
right.
they could, in theory, turn it off, and everyone turns their Kindles on the next day. And
there's nothing there.
Right.
More likely would be that the 5th or 6th or 10th generation Kindle doesn't support those files, and we would then have to potentially buy them again.
You could, and the difficulty, I think, with what we're seeing with all of these little isolated kind of biospheres, where you've got Apple's entire universe, and you have Apple devices that only work with Apple content, and then you've got Kindle devices that only work with Kindle content, and you've got Barnes & Noble devices that only work with that content. That's scary, because you find yourself very quickly locked into this particular, ecosystem, where you've already invested $100 worth of your money in books for this system. So are you really likely to switch from a Kindle to a Nook because you've already got this whole thing built up over here. And so I think that's the danger that we're seeing, is the lack of cross-compatibility is causing people to pick one system and then stick with it, whether it's good for them or not, whether they like it or not, because they feel stuck, and that's a little scary.
And the big clear leader in the field right now is Amazon.
By far.
And so that gives them a crazy advantage if everybody's going to be in a position where only I bought it from Amazon, I have to read it on some sort of Kindle. And there's an enormous amount. I know Amazon. Many people don't realize that Amazon is a gigantic search engine in addition to everything else. So I used to love the fact that, because I bought tons of books, a lot of real books. My wife is more of the e-booker.
We call them paper books.
Paper books.
Because ebooks are also real.
Oh, good.
Just to be fair.
That is fair, and that's reasonable. And my guest last week talked at great length about the pros of ebooks and how that's lowered the barrier to self-publishing. And so the upside, the good side of all this EPUB is that there are many more authors with many more ideas sharing many more books.
Absolutely.
The downside is Amazon knows a lot about me. And I really liked that for a while because I tend to buy two genres of books: business, and now media business, and detective stories. I assume they make novels and stuff on other subjects, but I read detective novels. Okay. That's what Amazon does a brilliant job of telling me what else I might like. And I always thought that was kind of cool because it's based on the books that I bought from them. Mm-hmm. And so I saw how they were kind of doing a little equation to figure out what else I might like. And that seemed fair. There seemed to be an equitable exchange of information. But if I'm leasing a library book through Amazon in some way, what level of information am I giving to them in that process?
Amazon knows who you are because you have tied your library card account with your Amazon account. To get a library ebook on your Kindle currently, you have to have both a library card and some Amazon account. So now it knows this library patron is also this Amazon customer. So it's not only tracking every book that you check out through the library and any notes that you make, any highlights that you add, any of that to the library books. It's also then tying that with any books that you've purchased in the past or anything else you've bought through Amazon. I mean, I buy candles through Amazon. You could buy anything through Amazon,
sure.
Right? That's why we love it. But now those two things are joined. And they have all of that data in one place. And so it's something I think that people can make the choice. I don't care. I don't care if Amazon knows what library books I check out. I don't care. But it's important for libraries, I think, to let people know that this is the first time in the history of lending anything anywhere through libraries where a company is now tracking what our users are checking out.
A private
company, correct, has that data for the first time ever. And most libraries just aren't warning people just to let them make an educated choice. If you don't care and you still want to check it out, that's up to you, that's fine. But I think it's responsible for us to at least warn people that this is not business as usual and things have changed basically without our approval. We didn't think that was a good idea. It just happened one day. And so I think it's a little bit scary for me as a librarian to think that this might set a precedent where companies will feel perfectly entitled to start collecting data on what people do at libraries. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I think that there's so much talk about privacy, certainly around Facebook and the social media platforms. I talk to friends and clients who have privacy concerns about Facebook, and the answer really is, if you put it on Facebook, it's going to be on Facebook forever, and kind of too bad for you. So the solution is, don't put your social security number on Facebook.
Right.
But there's really such an ingrained level of expectation for me for privacy that on one hand, I am one of those, I don't care what they know. But on the other hand, where does it go from here? If everything I do begins to be tracked, without my permission, then without my knowledge, then where does this take us as a society?
Well, we are being tracked. There was a commission that was formed as a recommendation of the 9/11 group, 9/11 Commission, of what they're calling themselves the vengeful librarians. And it's a part, I know. And
That's a disturbing term.
It's a very disturbing term to hear that, because usually librarians are nice and we work really hard to be good people with respect for what your information is. It's a part of the CIA, and they're sifting through everything and anything that's going through Twitter and Facebook, searching in theory for terrorists or other nasty entities, but in theory, we don't know. But it's disturbing to me that there are people actively now using those social tools as a way to, seek out perhaps keywords. So if you and I start tweeting back and forth with words about terrorism or bomb building or whatever else they've decided are hot words, hotkeys, then we start getting tracked on an individual level. And that's a little frightening to me. It's one of those things that when I teach social media to the public, I always say, like you do, when you put something out there, the site that you put it on owns it. You have no real ownership or right to that information anymore. You've decided that it's public, and it's really hard to take it back once it's out there.
Right.
And I think that more of us have to be at least vigilant and aware that that's what's happening. And if you want to make the choice to do it again, that's up to you, but at least have it be an informed decision.
So it's no longer a crackpot fantasy that the government's watching what we do.
No, they're watching what you do. Unequivocally, they're watching what we do en masse, in aggregate, but if you start triggering things, then they're going to focus on you a little bit more individually.
So they can listen to everything and then hear the voices they choose to hear or that stick out, and then begin to dig down. One of the things about Twitter that people tend to forget is how really open it is. On Facebook, at least, there's this idea that if we're not connected, or at least not connected by connections, which as people grow their networks becomes too big to really count. But Twitter is wide open. And I've seen people tweet stuff that really is a private conversation, not to be conducted in front of 213 million other users.
Right. Well, you can lock Twitter down so only people that you've accepted a connection with can follow you and see what you're tweeting. But most people don't do that because the default is to just
Open.
share everything. And of course, you've got the problem of people confusing tweeting with the direct messaging on Twitter. So you do have things that sometimes were meant to be private conversations, such as certain photographs of certain body parts of certain elected officials showing up very publicly and incorrectly. And that kind of mistake's so easy to make that you have to be very mindful when you're putting info out there.
Well, when it comes to politicians, it's just a useful way to thin the herd a little bit.
Okay.
If this guy's too stupid to not understand underpants on Twitter, perhaps we don't need him in
right.
Congress.
I ascribe to that theory.
One man's opinion.
Yes, fine.
But as this grows more and more, the librarians are beginning to, well, not beginning to, there's some pushback from librarians. Where does it go? I mean, do you see that it's possible to change these licensing agreements? Do you see that it's possible to be more upfront with people and say, here are the dangers, here are what you're exposing yourself to, here's the way it really works? Because I didn't understand until this conversation the whole idea that I'm really just leasing it. I like to buy stuff. I don't lease my cars. Why would I lease a book?
I don't know why you would lease a book other than it's your only option right now. You don't have the option to buy it, and libraries don't have the option to buy. We only have the option to lease. So you either lease it or you have nothing. You don't buy a digital book. So there are a number of people who, as private citizens, have decided they are only going to buy paper books, even though they like ebooks, because they want to own it, and that's the only way now that you can own it. But librarians are fighting back, I think, very strongly through legislative action, and we're working really hard with different agencies and different committees in the government that are looking at issues like net neutrality, copyright protection, digital rights management, to at least have our voice be at that table so that the need for privacy, the need for preservation of information over time, sustainable access to information over time are issues that they're considering when they're writing this legislation, instead of just hearing from the big media companies that want to lock everything down so they can make as much money as they can. So our voices are being heard, and we'll continue to try to be heard as time progresses.
Because librarians are good people.
We are good. We are very good people.
Except for
good people.
The vengeful librarians
Yeah.
at the CIA.
Maybe not such good. I don't know them, but it's a little frightening.
But I think I just came up with the topic for that eventual detective novel that I'll write. Now, tell me, and we just have a couple minutes left, there was a lot of talk about Google's project digitizing books, and that's completely open source. Is that true? No, she says with a look. Not exactly.
No, not exactly. There's been pushback from authors and pushback from publishers on some of the works that Google was digitizing through libraries. And so the project is kind of in this weird limbo state at present. I don't think that I would look to that as a place where all literature is going to be sustained forever and ever. I think projects like the Internet Archive's Open Library Project, which is a great organization actually based here in San Francisco, they've got a library that rivals what Google was doing and is actually all open source, and it truly is. So that's what I would look to, that model instead of Google's for the future.
It is possible that we can get together and cooler heads will prevail, and we can build a digital library, the equivalent of the great mythical libraries of Alexandria and stuff, something that really will sustain for 100 years.
I believe it's possible. I believe we'll get there.
Well, that's what I like to hear. We'll end that slightly dark look at social media and the digital new media age on that upbeat note. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
It's great. I look forward to our next conversation. And thank you for watching this episode of Social Jumpstart, the cable television show for social media. I'm Mike Wolpert, and we're live once again from our studios at tag.com. See you next time.